Okay, this. Yeah. Is that how it looks on Instagram? Well, it looks like it. Let me just. View on YouTube. Yeah, I was thinking for a minute, yeah, let me just start this again tomorrow. But then Malcolm was like, nah, we're gonna do this tonight. I got like 15%. It's a slow charger. I don't know where my other charger is to this laptop. And these other chargers, they just aren't effective enough. But I think I could get through the first chapter. So yeah, let's try this again. Let me try it again. Okay, we're gonna do that. Thank my ancestors. Thank you, ancestors. They mean everything to me. My ancestors, I love my people so much. I had no idea we done suffered all of this. I had no idea. I would have had a little bit more empathy and understanding and forgiving for us if I did. And now that I do know, my heart goes out to us. We right on the brink of not even, coming through this. If we lose this opportunity right here, if we lose this opportunity, y'all, and our babies get sucked into this madness, it could be centuries before they come out of it. We have no idea who we up against, what has happened to us, the trauma that truly affects us. We have no idea. Some of it is really unmentionable. If someone had told me these things, I can't say I would have even believed it. If someone had told me these things. But to actually read it and to know that these are facts, ain't nobody lying. No one's lying. Where's Ida B. Wells at? The Red Record. I love to have my black Bibles with me, honey. We got black Bibles. Ain't nobody told you that, Black America, but you got black Bibles. You got black Jesuses. Yeah. This book right here is just 100 years. We got centuries, 400 years. We're dealing with our open enemy, white America. It won't be hidden no more. My ancestors will not be hidden anymore. They won't be denied no more. They won't be rejected no more. It's time to learn every name that we were distracted from. We were made to forget, forgive, and forget them. All our aunties, cousins, grandmamas, great grandmamas that we sat there and made our great grannies forget about their sons that were lynched and burned at the stake. We don't talk about them no more. Don't nobody name their babies after them no more. We don't celebrate their birthdays. We don't remember what happened to them, and let it guide our interaction in this illusion of inclusion. We miss the most crucial keys that would have guided us, gave us some type of foundation to stand on. Now, our people can tell you, keep God in the middle of everything. Now, keep your ancestors in the middle of everything too now. I know the Bible taught you God is a jealous God. Of course, the Bible gonna teach you God is a jealous God. There's so many gods. Maybe you need to pick another one, Black America. You've been calling on a cat, but your ass need a dog. Somebody tell us the truth here. Quit fucking playing with us. Manipulating us, lying, distracting us. Everybody in on the sabotage, the theft of melanin. While the world just calls itself elevating. Calls itself elevating. To what? Everything that's going on is anti-life on this planet. Everything. I don't see nothing that's pro-life, that's being built up, created, rolled out. No, I don't see nothing that's pro-life. All I see is anti-life, madness, oppression. That's all I see. That's all I see. And then it's like, well, where do Black people fit into that? All of this that's going on and stuff. Everybody don't know. But yeah, everybody know. Everybody know that you the most vulnerable. You think you gonna stay down. Think you're gonna stay down under this, but you can't, Black America. I forgot who I was listening to, brother, and he was saying we at this point now where you feel it to just start going to the gym. You feel it. Just sit your ass down and read a book. You ain't never read a book before. But sit your ass down and read a book. Where you get the book, I don't know. Could be at the library, stop at some of them little library houses. Could be over a friend's house or something. You just find yourself doing things that's different. And those things, they part of the elevation. You're going to know they part of the elevation because it's going to start you to thinking and looking for more that's productive. Now, if it leads your ass to doing destructive things and vandalizing and stuff, then you took the wrong turn. You took the wrong turn. You need to back up and go the other way. I'm just saying. But yeah, let me do this all over again. Copyright disclaimer under 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. And again, I think it did hook up again to Instagram. I'm not sure. But and in that case, if it did and stuff, I'll just introduce myself. Yeah. Again. Where is the book at? Here we go, right here. Yeah, I didn't even really think about it that the charger was charging really slow. It was actually charging so slow. But yeah. So Malcolm X is what we had started reading, and I didn't even get, past the first page before the laptop cut off. But preface. And hopefully it's on there and stuff, yeah. The 60s was a decade of change in the United States. Some of the changes were orderly, some were not. In a way, it was the first period in American history in which people took their protests to the streets and actually forced changes in the way the country went about its business. The changes began, as so many do, with the people's protesting against a long-standing injustice. In this case, the evils of a racially divided society. From the hard times of the civil rights movement, from the jails and the bombings, the hatred and the love, the curses and the prayers, emerged some of the most memorable people in the history of this country. People such as Martin Luther King Jr., Thurgood Marshall, Medgar Evers, Fannie Lou Hamer, Septima Clark, and the Kennedy brothers, Robert and John. There were people who were quietly courageous, who risked their lives for their fellow human beings, and who too far often lost their lives. Not since the Civil War had there been as much violence on the American streets. on American streets. It is hard now to think of a United States in which black people could not even drink from the same water fountains as white people, or in which black students could not attend public schools that their tax dollars had paid for, simply because of the color of their skin. In some places, blacks were barred from restaurants, prevented from voting, and forced to sit in the back of buses. To be black was to be treated with contempt, a contempt that was often backed by what were then called Jim Crow laws. In the wretched days of protest known as the Civil Rights Movement, America confronted its racial problems, not only in the courts, but in the streets as well. It is a rare testimony to the American system of government that the country was not torn apart. To select one person or even one group of people as being pivotal to the 60s is risky. There were many people who were important in that exciting time in American history. Who is best remembered? Whose words have best stood the test of time? Whose actions most define the temper of the times as we remember that time, and that temper from the present? For many, it was a man named Malcolm X. It was Malcolm's anger, his biting wit, his dedication that put the hard edge on the movement, that provided the other side of the sword, not the handle of acceptance and nonviolence, but the blade. Who ever heard of a nonviolent revolution? Malcolm asked. Who ever heard of a revolution without bloodshed? The mere possibilities inherent in the question sent government officials to backroom planning strategies with nonviolent demonstrators. Malcolm showed that one person riding the crest of social discontent could still inspire great masses of people. He displayed the awesome potential of a portion of Black America that many thought would sleep forever, and proved that Black docility was a thing of the past. Malcolm and the Nation of Islam drove the civil rights movement, gave it the dark side that many feared it might have. It was Malcolm who said to Black Americans that they did not always have to hide their pain or their outrage. It was Malcolm who claimed the imagination of young Black men as no one had since Frederick Douglass had called them to fight in the Civil War. The segregation signs have been taken down now. They can be bought at flea markets as collectibles from a distant era. The pictures of Black students being escorted to school by armed soldiers can be found only in history books. And today, they're being erased. But the memories of the 60s and of Malcolm X remain. He remains because he represented and still represents something that other leaders as courageous as Malcolm, did not. These leaders, Black and white, men and women, willing to risk their lives in the search of justice for all people, represented a courage that was right for that time. But Malcolm's words would speak to today's time and to the young people of today, who in many ways are as different from the mainstream of American life in the 90s as their parents were in the 50s and 60s. The reasons might be different, but the disillusionment is the same. Malcolm scared America. The fear he generated might well have cost him his life. But in scaring America and bringing it face to face with the realities of our society in the 60s, he left it a better place. Malcolm X. We love him. That's our brother. That's my brother forever. And ever can't nobody tell me nothing. Yep, let's read. Introduction. A Man Called Malcolm. April 1957, New York City. 2 black and white New York City police cars pulled up to the curb in front of the 28th precinct. Curious onlookers watched as the police pulled a black man from the back of one of the cars. The man's arms were handcuffed behind him. There was blood on his head and on the front of his shirt. 2 hefty police officers, one on either side, half lifted, half pulled the man into the station. On the street, some people commented to each other and then went about their business. It wasn't the first time that a black man had been hauled into the police station, or even the first time one had been brought into the station bleeding. 123rd Street is in the center of Harlem. The street is not particularly wide, and often the police cars in front of the precinct were parked on the sidewalk. Red and brown buildings along the street, which had seemed almost colorless during the long winter months, were coming alive in the early spring winter. Already, there were signs of the coming summer. On the fire escapes overlooking the street were flower boxes, an occasional mop put out to dry, and sometimes a small child playing under the watchful eye of a grandparent. In the windows, the serious watchers, the women who brought special pillows to the windows on which to rest their elbows, didn't spend much time on precinct activity. Like on the show we had 227, and Pearl would be sitting in the window on her pillow. There were other more cheerful things to see on the busy streets. There were always the children playing spirited games of ring olivia and stickball, moving reluctantly from their games to allow cars to pass, or playing double dutch. Some of them might be skating. Other women sat in front of their houses and exchanged the most recent gossip. Old men played bid whist or dominoes while young men whispered their best lines to slim-waisted girls. The street held a rich assortment of colors: the brightly colored skirts of Jamaican blacks, the white shirts of the old men, and the blue jeans of the youngest boys all served to offset the drabness of the buildings themselves. But the most vibrant colors were those of the inhabitants of the street. They ranged from the deep brown, almost pure black of some of the boys idly bouncing a basketball, to the cinnamon-colored shopkeeper on the corner, to the cream-colored, almost white woman playing with her child. The baseball season had just started, and then there was talk about the retirement of Jackie Robinson. Jackie had been a Harlem hero from his interest into professional baseball in 1947 until he decided to hang up his spikes. Some old-timers were talking about the ball players from the old Negro leagues: Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson, and Buck Leonard. Younger men were talking about Willie Mays. Let me see, because we do have the Negro leagues. Yep, we got the Negro leagues. I don't think I said it over here. I'm going to have to, that's one of the books I'm going to have to leave out, because I often like to look at it. I often like to reference it. The Negro Leagues. I took it out of my grandbaby's library. They got their own library, and some of these books come out of there and stuff as I learn, and they learn, and we learn. But I'll find it. Suddenly, there was a stirring on the street. Something was happening. There's an unspoken language in Harlem, a way that the people walk and look at one another that signals that something important is going on. The casual pace is suddenly quickened. The rhythms of the street are less relaxed. There's an electricity in the air. There was a decrease in the volume of street noises. Portable radios were turned down. Conversations were interrupted. Eyes turned toward the busy 28th precinct. What they saw shocked them. In front of the 28th precinct was a formation of black men. They were all dressed neatly with short haircuts, their arms folded before them. Some wore dark glasses. Many wore suits. None of them were smiling. The black Muslims! The word quickly spread along the street. The women in the windows shifted the pillows that protected their elbows from the concrete windowsills. A crowd began to gather around the men in formation. A white policeman. I gotta fix this tonight. Yes, honey, Malcolm wants to be where he can be seen as I'm reading. Sure do. Don't get it twisted now. All right, come on. Yes, honey, baby child. A white policeman took a look at the lines of men and quickly disappeared into the station house. A brown-skinned young man, tall and blade thin, carefully surveyed the formation that defiantly faced the precinct doors. Pleased by what he saw, he adjusted his glasses, walked toward the station house, and through the heavy doors. Inside the station, the young man walked quickly to the desk sergeant. He noticed the white police officers gathered at the windows. The thin man who confronted the desk sergeant demanded to see the black man who earlier had been brought to the station bleeding and in cuffs. He asked for the man by name. The officer at the desk said the man wasn't there, but the stern-faced man in front of him insisted that he was. The officer seemed nervous as he admitted that the man was indeed there, but that he could not be seen. And who are you? The officer asked. Malcolm X. The answer was quick in coming and forcefully delivered. Malcolm X declared that until the man, Johnson Hinton, was actually seen and he was personally assured of Hinton's safety and that he was receiving proper medical attention, the formation that had assembled outside the precinct would remain. Oh, damn. All right. Shit. Yes, honey. Glad I didn't break that motherfucker, but that's all right because I got to back up here. Malcolm X declared that until that man, Johnson Hinton, and my brother, I'm going to find his book and ask him, can I share it again? Because I don't like to step on nobody's toes. It's the same last name, Hinton. And also, what was the brother that the officer killed his son? And he ran over an officer. I believe his last name was Hinton. I'm going to have to do some checking and stuff. Malcolm X declared that until that man, Johnson Hinton, was actually seen and he was personally assured of Hinton's safety and that he was receiving proper medical attention, the formation that had assembled outside the precinct would remain. The police of the 28th precinct had heard of the militant group commonly called the Black Muslims, but they had never seen it represented in this manner. The entire scene looked like trouble. In Harlem, the police did what they felt was necessary to maintain law and order. There had been occasional difficulties, but never an organized group of black men as this seemed to be. It was said that the Black Muslims hated all whites and were trained in the martial arts. The desk officer relented and allowed the man before him, Malcolm X, to see the man the police had arrested earlier. That man belongs in the hospital, Malcolm announced. An ambulance was called and Johnson Hinton was taken to Harlem Hospital. The men who had formed ranks outside the police station remained in formation as they followed the route of the ambulance to the hospital on Lenox Avenue. The crowd following the small force of men grew as they passed through the streets. By the time they had reached Harlem Hospital, the crowd had grown sufficiently for the local police to contact police headquarters in Lower Manhattan. A police official approached Malcolm X and told him bluntly that he would have to move his people away from the hospital. Malcolm refused, saying that the members of the Nation of Islam were standing peacefully within their constitutional rights and harming no one. The police officer looked at the men standing in ranks and walked away. Malcolm sent one of the men into the hospital to check on the condition of Hinton. The crowd behind the formation was growing more restless, and more police was summoned. Soon there were two lines of men facing each other, one white and the other one black. The policeman was not sure what was happening. The men of the Nation of Islam were motionless. The police official returned to Malcolm and told him that the crowd behind his formation was shouting at the police and acting in a manner that he could not tolerate. Malcolm said that he could control the members of the Nation of Islam. He would control the members of the Islam, and that the rest of the crowd was the problem of the police official. Again, the police official backed off. That man, the man that Malcolm had sent into the hospital, returned. He told Malcolm the doctors had assured him that Hinton was getting the best care possible. Malcolm signaled the formation of men, and they moved silently away. Yeah, we got to watch the movie, honey. Sure enough, that night and the next morning, the community was filled with talk of the Muslims and how they had confronted the police. The police talked about the incident as well and wondered exactly what challenge the Muslims presented to them and exactly who was this man who called himself Malcolm X. Honey, we made it to chapter 1. I know that's right. Bear with me. Yes. Thank you for your patience and your presence, my brother. Chapter 1, the Father. People do not just happen in history. They come along at a certain time and in a certain place. They react to ideas that have come before them and to people who have expressed those ideas. The man we know as Malcolm X was no exception. To understand who Malcolm was, there's no better place to begin than with his father. His family name was Little, but Malcolm's father, Earl, was a big man, tall, heavy-set, and dark. He was a man capable of working with his hands and with his mind. But in Reynolds, Georgia, where the Littles live, there were few opportunities for black men. Earl Little knew what he wanted to do with his life, to help his people gain their independence and to help African Americans everywhere to reach their full potential. He also wanted a family, but his first marriage did not work out and left him still searching for the settled life he had so badly wanted. Although his family still lived in Reynolds, Earl decided to continue his travels, eventually finding his way to Montreal, Canada. It was in Montreal that he met Louise Norton, an attractive black woman who had come to Canada from the British island of Grenada. Earl soon fell in love with Louise and proposed marriage. In 1919, the couple was married and settled in Philadelphia. The year the Littles were married was a year of difficulties for African Americans. Many had believed that since they had fought for America in what had been described as the war to end all wars, World War I, they would not face the same kind of racism they had before the war. Oh, so they married in 1919, the year of the Red Summer. Red Summer, the summer of 1919, and the awakening of Black America. Ooh-wee. They were wrong. Black American soldiers had received international attention in Europe for their valor and bravery and had received medals and honors for their participation in the First World War. But neither recognition for their sacrifices nor their bravery made a difference back home in the United States. In the States, people of color were not given the same rights as were given to whites. In many parts of the country, North and South, Black people could not live in white neighborhoods, couldn't go to schools with whites, couldn't ride in the same railroad cars, couldn't play in the same public parks, or even drink from the same water fountains. In some parts of the country, this separation of the races, called segregation, was legal. In other parts of the country, segregation was not legal, but Blacks were still forced to accept the role of second-class citizens. They found that law officials would not protect them when they tried to put a stop to these practices. More important, many Blacks were the victims of mob violence that ranged from being beaten to actually being killed. Some Blacks who had been accused of crimes against whites were hung by white mobs without the benefit of trial or any legal proceedings. And before I go any further, this is a picture of his father and his mother, Miss Louise and Mr. Earl. Uncle, auntie and uncle. Yep, that's Malcolm's mother and father. Aunt Louise and Uncle Earl. Yep, they all in the afterlife, watching us now. Watching us now, Black America. We ain't here for nothing. This ain't no coincidence. Sure ain't, honey. Oh, yeah, I'm going to fix this as soon as we done. Others were beaten or killed just because they had angered some white person. The law did very little to protect these people. In the year that Earl Little married Louise Norton, there were a number of lynchings across the United States. One of them happened in Omaha, Nebraska. Oh, my ancestors. Oh, my ancestors. Malcolm, my brother. Honey. That's who I just referenced to y'all. That's who I just referenced. Our Black Jesus. We got so many of them. Malcolm is our Black Jesus. All of my ancestors. Look at that. And Omaha, Nebraska, September 28th. One of them happened in Omaha, Nebraska. A man named Will Brown was accused of attacking a white woman. He was put in jail while the charges were being investigated. A large gang of young white men stormed the jail, demanded that the prisoner be turned over to them to be killed. The sheriff refused, saying that the prisoner should be given a fair trial. The mob, which grew larger by the hour, set fire to the jail, threatening the lives of the other prisoners and the guards as well. They shot the town's mayor when he tried to intervene in the lawless act. After a long siege in which many people were injured and killed, the prisoner was handed over and immediately shot by the rioters. He was then hung from a utility pole while members of the crowd fired more shots into him. Over the following days, the newspapers in Omaha were filled with stories of people who thought that this illegal act had been the right thing to do. This was the world that Earl and Louise Little faced as they began their married life. Indeed, it was the world that all Americans faced, all African Americans faced. But Earl Little did not simply accept this world. He tried to change it. In the first days of his marriage to Louise, when the couple was in Philadelphia, Earl had heard the speeches of a fiery black leader named Marcus Garvey. To the Littles, Garvey's ideas were not merely appealing, they were electrifying. Marcus Garvey, the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. I had a book of Marcus Garvey's speeches, and that was a powerful book. I don't know. I think when I became homeless or was evicted or something like that, I must have lost it. I don't remember letting nobody read that book. But I'm gonna look through the library when I go and print off, when I go renew Racial Violence in Kentucky, 1865 to 1940, and Racial Violence in the United States. I just need to look back through them. I'm not gonna read them again because it took me a long time to read them books. But I need to look back in them and stuff and look for some stuff that I just can't stop thinking about. Marcus Garvey, like Louise Little, was born in the British West Indies. Garvey was born in 1887 on the island of Jamaica. It was clear to Garvey that black people all over the world were not doing well. In Jamaica, a largely black population was, with few exceptions, living in poverty. Blacks in the United States were on the bottom of the economic ladder, and the rich resources of Africa were being exploited by European and North American companies. Garvey believed that African Americans were too dependent on whites. They needed to create their own businesses, their own jobs, and their own schools if they wanted to succeed in the world. They also needed a spiritual home, he thought. And what better home for African Americans than Africa? Garvey created the UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and the newspaper, Negro World. When Earl Little moved his family to Omaha, Nebraska, he took the ideas of Marcus Garvey with him. Garvey needed good people to help spread his message, and Earl Little soon became the head of the Omaha chapter of the UNIA. So he moved where Willie Brown was lynched. Life was tough for the Littles in Omaha. Blacks were the last ones hired for the few available jobs, and the first ones fired when work was slow. Many of the men in the small city worked on seasonal jobs, and the women were lucky if they could get jobs cleaning the homes of the whites in the area. The Little family grew. Earl and Louise had 3 children by the time they arrived in Omaha in 1925. On the 19th of May of that year, they had their 4th child, a boy they named Malcolm. Earl Little understood that the church gave blacks the opportunity to worship, but also to organize. The city directory of Omaha in 1926 listed him only as a laborer, but to his people, he was a man of ideas. Elder Little, as he was known, was an excellent speaker. As a minister, he delivered the message of Christian salvation, but it was his political talks that brought him the most attention among both the blacks and whites. He spoke of the problems of the black race and the ideas and philosophy of Marcus Garvey. It was not a message that went over well in a city in which blacks was not supposed to speak up or to stand up for their rights. Oh, this right here is Malcolm's birth certificate. Look, when I write these things out, I got a lot of stuff to write out because, I like to annotate. I'm going to do that too. I'm going to do his birth certificate out too and put that on my wall over there where his birthday and stuff is. Yep, I like to annotate. Nervous blacks discouraged Elder Little from talking about the rights of black people. They were afraid he would just stir up trouble for them. The Ku Klux Klan, a white hate group, was also active in Omaha, and they warned Elder Little to keep his mouth shut about what the black man should do in Omaha. Women were encouraged to become active members of the UNIA, and Louise Little also joined the militant organization, reporting the activities of the Omaha chapter to the national UNIA office in New York's Harlem. Often the meetings were held on Lake Street in Omaha, in the center of the black community. We'll begin with the singing of the hymn From Greenland's Icy Mountains. Yeah, we got to sing, y'all. From Greenland's icy. Well, maybe I can just read it like it's a hymn. From Greenland's icy mountains, from India's coral strand, where Africa's sunny fountains roll down their golden sand, from many an ancient river, from many a palmy plain, they call us to deliver their land from error's chain. Yeah, I stopped going to church as soon as I could. So yeah, I don't really even remember how him go unless it's like amazing grace. And I want to sing this like that. And I don't think the words are fit, but that song racist anyway. Yeah, I'm just saying. Let's read. As Elder Little continued to speak out for the rights of his people, he gained more and more attention in Omaha and received more and more threats from white racists. The racists could force Elder Little to move by threatening the safety of his family and by threatening those in Omaha who employed him. It was after a particularly frightening threat that Earl Little moved his family from Omaha to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Although he had moved from Omaha, Earl Little did not move away from his faith in spreading the message of black independence, gaining more and more respect within the UNIA as a speaker and a religious leader. When the Little family moved to Milwaukee, they were still active in the UNIA. But by this time, the Garvey movement, which had thousands of followers in the New York and Philadelphia areas, was in trouble. Oh, wait. I can't make that. Yes, I can. Omaha, Nebraska. And this right here is Louise Little reported on the activities of the UNIA's Omaha chapter. The Omaha division met on Sunday, June the 13th in Liberty Hall, 2528 Lake Street. The president, Mr. E. Little, presiding. Opening song from Greenland's Icy Mountains. Prayer and preamble by the president. Musical selection. Professor A. Vance was introduced and held his hearers' attention about matters of the organization. A membership drive was launched for the coming week in which Mr. Vance will participate. Louise Little reported. See? Yeah. I know I like to show y'all stuff. Some of these books don't even have pages. You just have to visualize it yourself. Garvey was suggesting that African Americans turn to Africa as their spiritual home. But many black people did not want to associate themselves in any ways with Africa. They complained to the government about Garvey. Meritorious manumission. In addition to these people, the Bureau of Investigation under J. Edgar Hoover, later the FBI, was also investigating Garvey. The Bureau considered anyone attempting to unite blacks as a possible threat to the security of the United States. Garvey had been raising money for his various economic projects throughout the sales of stock, but he did not have the business experience needed for such a large operation. He formed a company and sold stock through the mail. But when his company's records were examined and found to be faulty, he was arrested and tried for mail fraud. Many people felt that Garvey had not been given a fair trial, but he was still found guilty and sent to a federal prison in Atlanta. Earl Little sent several letters pleading for clemency for Garvey. One was intercepted by Bureau Director J. Edgar Hoover. The 20s in the East was a relatively good time for blacks. Black authors like Claude McKay and Langston Hughes were creating important works depicting the lives of their people. But in the Midwest, African Americans were struggling, trying to find steady work, often moving from town to town to find it. By 1927, the Littles had moved from Milwaukee to Albion, Michigan. During the period of African American enslavement, Albion had been one of the stations on the Underground Railroad, the system of escape routes along which blacks fled from southern plantations northward toward Canada. Immediately following the Civil War and the passage of the 13th Amendment, which freed the enslaved Africans, many black people lived with white citizens in Albion as housekeepers or servants. Malcolm was barely 4 when the Little family moved into a farmhouse on the outskirts of Lansing, Michigan. But the new home would not be permanent for the still growing family. White people who were opposed to having black neighbors went to court and sued to reverse the sale of the house to the minister's family. The sale was illegal, they argued, because of a clause in the deed that said the land shall never be rented, leased, sold to, or occupied by persons other than those of the Caucasian race. Earl Little vowed to fight for the right to stay in the house he had bought. 2 weeks after he had made his brave decision, the house was burned down. The fire was set in the middle of the night while the family slept. Elder Little thought that the fire must have been set by the people who didn't want a black family living among them. The local fire department came, but did nothing to put out the fire. Malcolm and his brothers and his sister stood outside the house on a cold November night while the house burned to the ground. And the firefighters standing there laughing, joking, spraying water on trees and in the yard, making puddles and drinking water out the hose, but let the house burn. The family moved to a house in East Lansing, Michigan, and were stoned by their white neighbors. East Lansing, a college town, had no low-income housing or colored neighborhood. Earl Little, fearing for the safety of his family, moved again, this time to the outskirts of town. The year was 1929, the beginning of the Great Depression. By 1931, there were 7 children in the Little family. Wilfred was the eldest child, then Hilda, followed by Filbert, followed by Filbert and Malcolm. Reginald, Yvonne, and Wesley were born after Malcolm. Elder Little continued to spread the word about the Garvey movement. He went from town to town talking about the problems of black people and even became the head of a UNIA chapter in Indiana Harbor, Indiana. And this right here is a photo of 3 of Malcolm's siblings from left to right. There's Wesley, Yvonne, and Reginald in front of the Littles' homes in Lansing, Michigan. Wesley, that's Wesley. That's Yvonne. And that right there is Reginald. Wesley, Yvonne, and Reginald. Earl Little had taken Malcolm to UNIA meetings, had let him hear the rallying cry of its members to uplift the race. Malcolm had seen his father active in the meetings, had seen him speak to crowds of cheering African Americans, and had seen the respect that he had both as the president of the Omaha branch of the UNIA and as an outstanding spiritual leader. And although he most likely did not understand them all, Malcolm had also heard of the issues that faced Black America. But by the time he was 6, he had seen his father speak up time and time again for Black people, and had seen his mother work with his father in the UNIA. He had heard his father speak time and time again about Marcus Garvey and the need for all people of color to unite. Elder Little was the source of strength within his family and within the Black communities where he traveled. Then, on the 28th of September, 1931, Malcolm was again awakened in the middle of the night. This time it was not the house on fire or angry neighbors trying to force the family to move. His mother was screaming. There were police in the living room trying to calm her down. They took a tearful woman to Sparrow Hospital, where Earl Little lay dead. Earl Little's crushed body had been found lying near a trolley track that ran between Lansing and East Lansing. The conductor of the trolley claimed not to have seen the huge black man and stated that somehow he must have approached the trolley on his own, then somehow fallen beneath its wheels. Louise Little believed her husband had been killed by whites who did not want him to continue preaching the philosophy of Marcus Garvey. The police report said that the death would be investigated. For any child, it is difficult to believe that a father who was so central in his life could be so quickly taken away. Malcolm would never forget the night that his father was killed. He will remember the screams of his mother and of the suddenly fatherless family huddled together in yet another tragedy. Earl Little was dead, but he had left an impression on many African Americans in Nebraska, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana, places where he had taught and served Black people. He had left an impression on these people and on the young, frightened person of Malcolm Little, his son. And this right here is a newspaper account. That's a newspaper account. Let's see what they motherfucking niggas say. Man run over by streetcar. Earl Little, 41, fatally hurt, thought to have fallen under truck. Coroner plans inquest. Believed Negro lost life because he forgot coat, left earlier car. Earl Little, 41, living at Jolly Corners, sustained fatal injuries late Monday night when he was run over by a streetcar at Detroit Street and East Michigan Avenue, a block east of the city limits. Anybody live there now? You live close to there, take some pictures. Take some pictures and send it to me. I just want to see the cross street, the street. The car was operated by William Hart, 1417 Vine Street, who told Coroner Ray Gosselin that he did not see the man before the accident. It is believed that he fell under the rear tracks as he was running for the car. Coroner Gorling found that Little had taken another car which passed about 12 minutes before the car operated by Hart. He reached for his pocket when he boarded it, but told the motorman to let him off at the next corner. He did not have an overcoat on at this time, it was said, but did have an overcoat on when the accident occurred. Went back for the coat. It is believed that he discovered that he had forgotten his coat when he reached for his purse, and that he got off the car to go back for it. The coroner had been unable to discover where he left the coat. When he was found, his purse and a streetcar check were in the overcoat pocket. Coroner Gorling planned to summon a coroner's jury for an inquest and expected to take the members of the jury to the scene of the accident Tuesday forenoon. Little, a Negro, leaves a widow, Mrs. Louise Little, 10 children. The parents, Mr. and Mrs. John Little of Reynolds, Georgia, three sisters and a brother, James Little of Albion. Funeral services will be held at the Buck Funeral Home Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. The body will be taken to Georgia for interment. And the funeral home, too. We made it to chapter 2. We made it to chapter 2, honey. Yes. My brother. Because y'all know eventually we're going to go back to the torture and the trauma and stuff. But in between that, we're getting some more readings in and stuff. Chapter 2, the son. When Malcolm's father was killed in 1931, the country was in the middle of a depression. Every morning in the cities, there were long lines of men and women looking for jobs, and sometimes just a meal to get through the day. Nighttime found many of these same people sleeping under bridges and in old shacks on the edges of towns. Whites and blacks alike suffered as factories closed and steady employment was hard to find. For the little family, it was a time of near desperation. With the death of his father, Malcolm felt insecure. The very idea that someone so close to him, someone he had considered so large and invincible, could suddenly be dead was a shock. Malcolm hadn't had the chance to see his father before he died. Earl Little had not been there to reassure him the way he always had in the past. Nights were suddenly filled with the possibilities of terror and of sudden death. The 6-year-old was afraid to go to sleep in the dark. Look at him when he was 6 years old. His father was everything to him. That was his world. He was 6 years old. There had been another change in Malcolm's life. He has recently started school. Nearly all the children who went to Pleasant Grove Elementary were white. Malcolm didn't mind that as long as they were nice, and most of them were. He knew that he couldn't stay home with his mother anymore. Most of the time she was out working or looking for work. Most black women in and around the Lansing and East Lansing areas did days work. They cleaned people's homes and were paid for the day's work. Local help wanted ads offered white women $5 a week for 6 or 7 days housekeeping. Black women made less. An 8 to 10 hour workday would often bring Louise Little only 50 cents. While Louise worked, Hilda took care of the younger children. There was no money for clothing. Malcolm had to wear what was handed down by his older brothers, and he was often teased about his poor clothing. Some of the white children in the school were also poor, but few as poor as the Littles. Louise Little was an intelligent, well-educated woman who, had she been white, could have done better. She was a proud woman, too. It was painful for her not to be able to take better care of her family. When she couldn't find work or lost a job that she so desperately needed, Malcolm would see her crying. He would watch her try to hide the tears from her children. Sometimes the family had barely enough to eat and would have to make soup out of wild dandelion greens they could gather in the yard. Malcolm would sometimes take the leftover greens to school the next day to eat for his lunch. Sometimes they only had cornmeal to eat, and their mother would make bread and soak it in whatever broth she could make. There were times when Malcolm went to school without eating anything. Being very hungry gives you a sense of dizziness, as if you're going to pass out at any moment. And sometimes Malcolm would sit in class and hope that he wouldn't fall. When he was 9 or so, Malcolm and his brother Philbert would go out rabbit hunting. When they killed a rabbit, they would sell it to one of their white neighbors. Years later, Malcolm would understand that the neighbors would buy the rabbits just to help the Little family. Malcolm's family did not eat pork or rabbit meat since both animals were considered unclean by many black families. That's why I rarely eat pork, because it was through Malcolm that I had to learn that pork ain't even clean. It made it easier for me when I learned that pig don't sweat. Pigs don't get rid of their toxicity. They don't have sweat glands. So I might well shit. If I ain't sweating, if I ain't sweating, and the pig ain't sweating, then yeah, I'm taking in more toxicity. So I'll abstain from some pork. If I do cheat and have some meat, because it's hard to stop eating meat after 40 some damn years, over half of your life. So yeah, I do struggle with it and stuff. But if I do have some meat and stuff, it'll be some chicken. Give me a piece of chicken leg. I eat a piece of chicken leg. But I feel so much better and resonating with myself when I don't have meat. Meat put me to sleep now. But I'm just saying, Yeah, I got my scalp itch in just a minute, y'all. Malcolm's mother had to apply for help for the family, and they began to receive a small welfare check. Louise could not feed the children by herself, but for a long time she had resisted asking for help. When social workers visited the Little home, they were surprised. Louise Little did not speak or act the way other blacks in the area did. Oh, shit. Yeah, you know they didn't like that either. Sure didn't, honey. She spoke as an educated person. Her early training in Grenada giving her already precise English, a slightly British accent. She instructed her children that they were to be polite, but they did not have to either beg for assistance or feel that they had to be particularly grateful to the social workers. Yeah, the few clothes and food supplies that Louise Little accepted, she considered a loan, one that would have to be repaid. Louise did not like the way these people from the welfare office walked around her house, treating her family as if their feelings didn't matter. Malcolm began to notice how much the people from the welfare office bothered his mother, and he began to resent them as well. In Michigan, as in almost every state during the Depression, there were locations where once or twice a month, free food was given to the needy. Only the poorest families were entitled to this food, and soon the Littles were among them. And here's Malcolm's fourth grade class at Pleasant Grove Elementary School. See, and there go Malcolm right there. I don't know how I'm gonna get this on here. I got a big roll of Scotch tape right over there. Children who saw Malcolm and his family at the food station said things to him in school, things that were very painful to him, but there was nothing he could do about it. Not all of the children in school or in the neighborhood where they lived were mean to him. Many of them knew what it was like to be poor, and many were friendly to the little children. Malcolm played with his white friends as well as with the blacks who lived nearby. But something else was going on in Malcolm's house. The strain on his mother was beginning to show. Malcolm got into trouble. He had been caught stealing, and one of the neighbors told the welfare investigator because they told people to let them know. Yeah, they did. They were watching her and shit, motherfuckers. The welfare investigator questioned his mother, and much to Malcolm's surprise, the usually strong woman began to cry. She said she could raise her own children, that she didn't need their help. She seemed more upset than Malcolm had ever seen her before. Malcolm had done something wrong. He had stolen, and he was ready to take whatever punishment was given to him. But he wasn't ready for his mother's odd behavior. Louise Little began to sit for long periods of time without speaking. She acted as if she had suddenly forgotten to do those things she had always done around the house. She began to talk to nobody in particular, ignoring the questions of the children. Sometimes she would cry softly to herself for no apparent reason. Malcolm didn't like seeing his mother like that. He wanted to keep people away from her, to make the investigators stop asking her questions or asking him and his brothers and his sisters questions about her. The children tried to take over the running of the house. They tried to protect their mother, but things were getting difficult. In school, Malcolm could handle his assignments easily, but did not work as hard as his teachers thought he should have. Malcolm realized that he was bright. He was fairly popular too. He could play sports and made his school basketball team. He enjoyed playing basketball, baseball, and football with his schoolmates. In 1937, blacks were not allowed on most professional sports teams, but they were nevertheless making great strides in that direction. Joe Louis had become heavyweight champion of the world by knocking out James J. Bratter. It was about this time that Malcolm decided to try his hand at boxing. It was a disaster. It didn't take Malcolm long to discover that he wasn't going to be a tough guy. At any rate, he wasn't going to be tough physically. Mental toughness was another thing. Yeah. My brother said, no, this ain't it right here. But while Joe Louis from nearby Detroit was becoming heavyweight champion of the world, other black people were still being lynched or driven from their homes. In some places, blacks who tried to vote lost their jobs. In some states, blacks were arrested on minor charges with the intent of making them work on plantations, picking cotton or peanuts when cheap labor was needed. What the lynchings were all about, what the beatings and terrorizing were all about, was to force black people to remain second-class citizens. If you were an African American, there were things you were supposed to do and things you was not supposed to do. Depending on where you lived in the United States, you was not supposed to vote or to expect equal pay with whites or to live in white neighborhoods. You was not supposed to take any right that whites had not given to you. One of the things that African American males were not supposed to do was to be too friendly with white females. All black males knew this. It was something that was told to you when you were a child. And we forgot. Your black ass forgot. Well, you better start back doing it. You better start back telling your babies and stuff how white America is back to feeling some type of way. All black males knew this. It was something that was told to you when you was a child. Stories of young black men being hung from trees or burned alive because they had associated with white women were told in every black home. This constant threat to black America greatly affected how Malcolm reacted to his classmates. As Malcolm reached his early teen years, the years in which many young people started dating or at least began flirtations with classmates, Malcolm found himself in a school situation in which all the girls was white. In September 1938, Malcolm was 13 years old. He was tall, thin, with a wide smile and reddish hair that he wore short. He started the 7th grade and immediately began to have trouble in school. He had a series of conflicts with his teachers about his clowning around in class. The role of clown was probably what he felt, as if he were an actor trapped in a strange role in which he could never be himself. He couldn't tell people what was going on in his home, how his mother was talking to herself, how she seemed not to notice sometimes that the children were even there. His mother's condition worsened. More and more she appeared to need help, but the only thing the state investigators seemed to be concerned with was proving that Louise was an unfit mother. It was frightening for Malcolm to see her drift away from the family. He had already lost his father, and now he knew he was losing his mother. Before I go any further, this is a picture of John Lewis. John Lewis became heavyweight champion of the world in 1937. Yeah, I know I'm getting sleepy. I'm be getting sleepy now. But yeah, I wish I could keep on reading. If I were reading to myself, I could finish this in one night. But yeah, we're going to relish this. Yes. Investigators from the state of Michigan made plans to take Malcolm away from his family and put him in a home. Malcolm was placed in the home of a black family, the Gohanas. While living with the Gohanas, he had enough to eat, but was saddened by the fact that he had been separated from his own family. Malcolm was transferred from the Pleasant Grove School to West Junior High School. Social workers continued to go to the little house and to question the other children closely about their mother's behavior. Was she a good mother? How did she spend her time? Malcolm felt that the social workers were tearing apart the family unity. Louise Little had been through an extremely difficult time. She had had a good education, which she could not use because she was black. She had a philosophy of self-determination, which she could not exercise. She had pride in her race and her family, and that pride was being threatened as well. In January 1939, she was declared legally insane and committed to a mental institution in Kalamazoo, Michigan. State social workers decided to place the younger children in foster homes, an event that would always be a source of bitterness for Malcolm. Wilfred and Hilda were allowed to live in the house the Littles had called home for so many years. By the age of 13, Malcolm had seen his house burned down. He had been exposed to the violent death of his father, had known extreme hunger, had seen the slow breakdown of his mother, and had also seen brothers and sisters placed in homes. He began to have troubles at West Junior High. On one occasion, he put a thumbtack on the teacher's chair. He wasn't surprised when he was expelled from the school. He thought he simply would not go to school anymore, but found instead that he was being made a ward of the state and being sent to reform school. He was transferred to a county juvenile home in Mason. This right here is the county juvenile home in Mason, Michigan. Some 12 miles from Lansing. The Swirlings, a family, Swerleins, a family hired to run the group home in Mason, were friendly to Malcolm. They saw nothing wrong, however, in referring to Malcolm and other blacks as niggers. Malcolm got along well with the Swirlings. He tried hard to please them, and they seemed to like him. He was supposed to be transferred to the reform school, but instead he was enrolled in the junior high school at Mason. He was the only black student in the 8th grade, but ranked as the best student in most subjects. In his second semester, he was elected class president. Sometimes he was hassled in school by white boys who were tougher than he was. While Malcolm was still upset about the breakup of his family and his mother's being placed in an institution, he was trying as hard as he could to get along with the students in Mason. Malcolm states in his autobiography that during this time he tried to be as white as possible. Again, he was caught in a conflict. By acting in a white way, he was doing well, but he wasn't white, and he couldn't act as if he were white because he was still being called a nigger by kids who didn't like him. And he knew there were things he could and couldn't do because he was black. During this period, he became quieter, staying more to himself than he had earlier on. Malcolm was facing what all teenagers face, that moment in time when he had to look beyond what was happening from day to day and decided what he wanted to do in the future. He understood that he was bright. His grades at Mason proved as much. He knew how he ranked when compared to some of his classmates. He heard their plans for high school, college, and beyond. Some wanted to be doctors. Others thought about opening stores or going into law enforcement. Malcolm played basketball for the school team. When he played at other schools, some of the kids in the stands would call him racial names. The school sometimes held dances after the basketball games. Malcolm would go to the dances, but knew he wasn't supposed to dance with the white girls that attended them, and there were rarely any black girls. It was during this period of Malcolm's life that he met Ella, his half-sister. Earl Little had been married previously and had had 3 children. One daughter was grown now and lived in Boston. She invited Malcolm to Boston, and he took the long trip by Greyhound bus to see her. He wore his best suit and carried some spare underwear and shirts in a cardboard suitcase. Malcolm had never been to a big city before, and he was fascinated by the pace, the music, and the fast life of Boston. When he returned to Mason, he was full of stories about his trip and full of wonder about what it would be like to live in a place like Boston. Malcolm continued to do well at Mason Junior High. He was, in fact, doing what he was supposed to do to be part of an American society. He was studying and working hard to succeed by doing the right thing. One day at school, one of Malcolm's teachers asked him what he wanted to do with his life. The teacher was one of Malcolm's favorites. He had always done well in his classes and thought the teacher liked him. Malcolm hadn't thought much about what he wanted to do when he finished school, but he told the teacher that he wanted to be a lawyer. He had expected the teacher to be pleased with his choice since he had always encouraged his pupils, trying to get them to push themselves to explore their limits. But instead of being pleased with Malcolm's choice of profession, the teacher seemed upset. He reassured Malcolm that he liked him, but then he told him that he had to be realistic. We all here like you. You know that. But you got to be realistic about being a nigger, a lawyer. That's no realistic goal for a nigger. You need to think about something you can be. You're good with your hands. Why don't you plan on carpentry? And that's in the autobiography of Malcolm X. I can't wait to get his books. This is my first time reading Malcolm's book. It's been in there. I done thumbed through it. As you can see, it's barely holding together. But I haven't read it. This encounter with his teacher was a turning point in Malcolm's life. It was not a shock that the teacher would discourage him from being a lawyer. Malcolm knew that he was black and that blacks was not expected to succeed. He also knew that few blacks in Michigan went on to high school. There were few law schools in the country that even accepted black students. But Malcolm, like so many other young black men, had thought that doing the right thing, being smart, and getting good marks would work for him, even though he was black. The teacher probably thought he was doing Malcolm a favor by preparing him for what life was going to offer him as a black person. Before I forget, this right here is a picture of the Roxbury. Yes, honey, look at the Roxbury. I know that's right. You see it? Maybe I could get some color pictures. And this right here is a picture of Malcolm at 14 years old. Yes, I love Malcolm X. He's my favorite person in all of history, Malcolm X. In this life and the afterlife. Let's read. The teacher probably thought he was doing Malcolm a favor by preparing him for what life was going to offer him as a black person. Malcolm's classmates tried to cheer him up, but it wasn't helpful. On that day, Malcolm, in so many ways, simply gave up on the American dream. Again, Malcolm began to withdraw. As his classmates began to plan for their graduation and to talk about courses they would take in high school, Malcolm would avoid them. Very few blacks had ever gone to high school in Mason. They weren't expected to go beyond the 8th grade. And why should they, when they wouldn't be hired for most jobs that require more education? Malcolm was still corresponding with Ella. She invited him to come live with her in Boston. To Malcolm, the city of Boston was a completely different world, where Mason, Lansing, and East Lansing had been considerably smaller in population than Boston. They were light years behind in sophistication. What's more, Boston had an old-fashioned black population and a history of civil rights. It was in Boston that two of the most famous fugitive slave cases, that of Anthony Burns and later of George Latimer, had been tried. Burns had been returned to the South, but Latimer's freedom had been purchased by local blacks. And during the Civil War, it was from Boston that the famous 54th Massachusetts Volunteers, the Black Regiment that stormed the walls at Fort Wagner, sailed. Malcolm had never seen blacks so well dressed, so relaxed in the streets, or so fully participating in the life of the city as in Boston. Oh, we're on chapter 3. Oh, my ancestors, I got to keep going. Chapter 3, creating a new image. Shorty was from Lansing, Michigan. That made Malcolm his homeboy. He liked Malcolm and decided to teach him the ropes. He also got him a job as a shoe shine boy in the Roseland State Ballroom. Style. It was all about style. The shoe shine rags and brushes were to go about 1 foot rest. The polished bottles, the paste wax, and suede brushes were all to be within reach so that the shine would go smoothly. Customers liked to have a shoe shine boy who looked as if he knew what he was doing, as if he belonged to the job. Malcolm was to wash the urinals as well. When a man finished using one and washed his hands, Malcolm would hurry over with a towel, hoping for a tip. Tom a little. White cats especially like that. Freddie. Let me just put this on here, because if I can just use a couple of these right here, then it'll hold it on there. Hey, I know, right? You live and you learn. Look at this one. I'm not going to glue this on here. I was thinking about just, I might glue the spine together. Glue and tape. Duct tape will cover it up. Not that you'll be able to see the title, but we'll see what it's going to look like. Malcolm was to wash the urinals as well. When a man finished using one and washed his hands, Malcolm would hurry up with a towel, hoping for a tip. Tom a little. White cats, especially like that. Freddie, the old shoe shine boy, had hit the number and bought a Cadillac. Now he was showing Malcolm the work. Because he was telling him, Tom a little. White cats, especially like that, while he was popping that towel and shining them shoes. Roseland itself was an exciting place. The big bands played there, including Duke Ellington's and Count Basie's. Is that Basie's? The music was the best that Malcolm had ever heard. Look at one of the big bands that played at Roseland State Ballroom with Duke Ellington. Ow! Get your ass! I'm gonna beat your ass! You jump on me again like that. Scratch me. I will turn your ass up. The hell wrong with you? Yeah, I don't like that shit. Come jump up on me like that. Yeah, I bet y'all like, what the hell? Well, yeah. Well, yeah. I'm going to keep something on my lap. Man. But yeah, that was one of the big bands. It didn't say which one. And there go Duke right there. I think that's Duke. Right there in the middle. Right there in the middle. Ain't that Duke right there? But then that looked like him too, right there. So I don't know. Gonna ease your ass back over here. The sounds of all the records he had heard back in Lansing now filtered through the bathroom doors. Malcolm learned how to shine shoes, how to make the rag pop in rhythm, and how to put on a show for the customer. Brushing off a customer's coat as he looked into the bathroom mirror, a broad smile when accepting a quarter tip. We're all part of the game. Hustle up the tips, make money in the role of shoe shine boy, / flunky boy, / towel boy, / smiling boy, and then step back from the road to live the way they wanted to live in Roxbury. Ella lived in the Hill area, a more stable area of the black community. She didn't like Malcolm's shining shoes, and she didn't like him spending his time in Lower Roxbury. But Malcolm liked the more exciting area, with its pool halls and dives. In the streets, he saw blacks who laughed easily among themselves. You know, I can see them pimping now. Who had their own set of values and who gave each other value and respect in ways that did not depend on the white world. What held them together, at least on the surface, was style. They looked and dressed a certain way. They played cards, smoked reefer, and shot craps. Whether you won or lost at craps wasn't that important. If you won, you bought the beers at the party. If you lost, you still went to the party, but had to wait until a friend brought you the beers. Malcolm began to talk like the other young men who frequented the pool hall. In Roxbury, you could tell who a person was by the way he or she spoke. Did they use the latest slang? Did they know enough to call a white person an au fait? Did they know what was going through the changes meant? And the sure way of being rejected was to be a square, someone who did not know what was happening on the streets of Roxbury. The blacks on the hill might have rejected the people in Roxbury, but the stylish, down-to-earth people in Roxbury were also rejecting the so-called elites of Boston. Malcolm learned the language of inner-city Roxbury easily and learned something else too. In Roxbury, your intelligence and know-how were measured in different ways than they was in other places in which he had lived. In Lansing, your survival was dependent on the goodwill of white folks. And what you knew didn't matter much if you was black. In Roxbury, what you knew was the only thing that was going to get you over. And what you had to know was how to deal with people, how to survive in the streets, and how to hustle up a dollar and an image. The first thing that Malcolm needed for his new image was a zoot suit. The zoot suit might have been the wildest outfit that any American wore since powdered wigs, and Malcolm's was as wild as any. He found that he could buy a zoot suit on credit and went immediately to a local clothing store. Malcolm's suit was sky blue, with the high waist fitting fairly snugly. The legs of the suit flared out 30 inches at the knee, and then were sharply tapered to only 12 inches at the ankle. Malcolm had to take his shoes off and point his toes to get his foot through the narrow opening. He had to take his shoes off and point his toes like that and get them through the, like when we be putting on stockings, sister, and you got to squeeze your toes together. Yeah. The jacket of the zoot suit had exaggerated padded shoulders and tapered down to the waist before flaring out inches above the knee. He bought a matching sky blue hat with a super broad brim and a blue feather on the side. I remember me and my oldest granddaughter, that's one of our favorite movies. And when him and Shorty were walking across the street in the movie and they were swinging their arm like that, I could just see it like I watched the movie yesterday. The store owner gave him the final required accessory for the zoot suit, the long gold chain that hung from the belt, looped down below the coat and up into the pocket. Malcolm was sharp, baby. He had pictures taken of himself and was pleased with his new image, except for his hair. Malcolm had worn his hair short in Michigan. Now he let it grow long enough to have it combed. The word comp came from congoline, a caustic substance used in the 40s and 50s, which, when put on a naturally curly hair of blacks, flattened it out. It was done in black barbershops across the country, and many young people did it or tried to do it for themselves. Shorty helped Malcolm get the chemicals to make the comp. A can of lye, some white potatoes, and eggs made up the basic mixture. Malcolm watched as Shorty sliced the potatoes as thin as he could and put them in a mason jar. Then he poured in the lye, which reacted with the potatoes. The potatoes diluted in the lye. The result was a jelly-like mixture. Shorty added the eggs, which would make the homemade comp stick longer to the hair. Shorty put an apron around Malcolm, fastened it tightly around the neck. He told Malcolm to fill the jar. Malcolm put his hand around the jar. It was hot. That's the lie, Shorty said. So it's going to burn when I comb it in. It's going to burn bad. Next, Shorty combed out Malcolm's hair using Vaseline. Then he put on as much of the Vaseline as he could on Malcolm's skin, around the hairline and his ears. Because when you get a perm, sister, you got to put that hair grease. Yeah, put it Vaseline if you got it. Put it all around there and stuff. And your ears, my ears would be so burnt and stuff. I just pull the little skin off of it right there, just like that. Oh, yeah, now they got class action lawsuits against perms and stuff. So if you won and been affected by all the perms and stuff, go get your money. I'm just saying. He didn't want the lie to touch Malcolm's skin if he could help it. Shorty used a metal straightening comb to apply the lye mixture to Malcolm's hair. Malcolm could only think of one thing. Shorty was right, it burned. A good comp went as close to the scalp as possible and burned like crazy. Well, why using a metal comb? Malcolm gritted his teeth as Shorty worked as quickly and as carefully as he could. When he finished, he washed the area around Malcolm's neck and wiped away any lye that ran from his hair. Malcolm looked in the mirror. His long red hair was as flat and shiny as any white man's. He had his first comp. The zoot suit and the conch had a special significance for young blacks from Roxbury to Harlem. The zoot suit and the conch had a special significance for young blacks from Roxbury to Harlem to the inner cities across the country. They were the styles of choice for these young men, the styles that made them distinctive from the squares of the world. But there was also another significance. The only reason these young men could wear these outfits that many people felt were at best, strange, was because they were being excluded from the jobs that demanded more conventional dress. Banks would never allow their employees to dress in zoot suits, and neither would the big insurance companies in downtown Boston. But Shorty and Malcolm and the young black men in Roxbury knew they would never be hired by these companies anyway. If they weren't going to be allowed into conventional society, then they might as well be sharp. And there was nothing as sharp as a zoot suit. Malcolm learned how to dress, how to hustle tips at Roseland, how to talk hip, and how to dance. Ah, I know that's right. Malcolm needed a way to feel good about himself. If being a lawyer was not practical for a black man, then Malcolm would look somewhere else for personal value. He was finding it in the style and energy of Roxbury. Malcolm Little in Boston was not the same person as the Malcolm Little who had been in Lansing or in Mason. Part of the American dream is the hope that one day the dreamer will share in the adventure and excitement that defines what this country is all about. The dreamer hopes both to make a contribution and to benefit from participation in American society. While Malcolm was in Lansing and in Mason, he still thought, like so many other youngsters of his age, that he would one day take his place in American society. By the time he had immersed himself in the culture and lifestyles of Roxbury, he no longer shared that dream. Now, he was a young man resigned to the idea that the color of his skin would keep him forever on the outside of American society. Malcolm found that blacks were not the only ones excluded from American society. There were whites who frequented the same Roxbury bars and pool halls as the blacks. Malcolm had several girlfriends, and one of them, a girl named Sophia, was white. At this time, Malcolm was living a life that was not involved with race. Like most teenagers, he was thinking primarily of his own clothing and his own pleasures. See, when you stop thinking about race, then that's when you become distracted and you find yourselves involved and fucked up and leading a whole different life experience with people that, would have otherwise not been a welcoming distraction in your life. I'm just saying, in my opinion. That's kind of like what happened to myself too when I lost my book of roots. And I was like maybe 13. And I lost my book and I didn't have any other focus for my people, for me. And so, yeah, I made a lot of wrong decisions and stuff, But yeah, that's why we got to keep our children with this knowledge. We got to start teaching them now, tonight, today. If you haven't started, it's time to start. You ain't got to come on here and teach us, but you got to start at home. Get started home. Malcolm found that blacks were not the only ones excluded from American society. There were whites who frequented the same Roxbury bars and pool halls as the blacks. Malcolm had several girlfriends, and one of them was a girl named Sophia. At this time, Malcolm was living a life that was not involved with race. Like most teenagers, he was thinking primarily of his own clothing and his own pleasures. December 1941. The United States entered World War II. Malcolm had worked as a shoe shine boy, as a clerk in a drugstore, and as a busboy in a restaurant. He was 16. The Depression was still affecting the economy, especially for black men. Many black men did not have steady employment, and many would never rise above the position of laborer. For a teenager, jobs were few and far in between. A friend of Ella's got Malcolm a job on the railroad as a kitchen helper. Being a kitchen helper meant that he would be washing dishes, cleaning up after the regular cooks, bagging and disposing of garbage, and washing down the stoves and counters in the rolling kitchen. It was considered an excellent job for a black man. Malcolm worked first at the train yard, loading food onto the trains and doing general chores around the Dover Street yard. Early in 1942, he got his first chance to travel when he was assigned to the New York to Boston run. He washed tons of dirty dishes and silverware as an efficient kitchen crew prepared meals around him. The black railroad cooks and Pullman car porters were among the most respected workers in black America. Malcolm was surprised to find that many of the men who worked the railroads had college degrees. Malcolm worked in the kitchen for months before the opportunity came for him to work as a sandwich man. As a sandwich man, he found himself selling ham and cheese sandwiches and coffee cake on the speeding train, lugging the heavy 5-gallon jug of coffee through the rocking cars and trying to smile at potential customers as he struggled to keep his balance. It was during this time that he first visited Washington, D.C. and Harlem. Some Black people talk about how they felt upon reaching Africa for the first time. It was not simply ancestral roots that made them feel at home, but for the first time in their lives, they were in the majority. It was the Black race that dominated the streets, that looked at them over the counter of stores, and the banks that wore the uniforms of the police and of the postmen. It is often expressed that Africa gives American Blacks a sense of relief from a tension that they never fully understood they suffered from. Woo, I gotta read all that again, all that. Some Black people talk about how they felt upon reaching Africa for the first time. It is not simply ancestral roots that made them feel at home, but that for the first time in their lives, they were in the majority. We were with ourselves. Wasn't that many white folks around. It was the Black race that dominated the streets. It was the Black race that dominated the streets, that looked at them over the counter of stores and of banks, that wore the uniforms of the police and of the postmen. It is often expressed that Africa gives American Blacks a sense of relief from a tension that they never fully understood they suffered from. This is the same relief that many people feel when they first visit New York City's Harlem. Malcolm Little arrived in Harlem in his late teens. He too was at home. One of the interesting features of Harlem before the period of integration was that the community had an outstanding mix of people. Black judges lived in Harlem because they couldn't live in many places outside of the vibrant Black community. Wealthy Black doctors lived in Harlem in the 40s because they weren't allowed to move into white affluent neighborhoods, even though they could afford to do so. It was not unusual for prominent novelists, poets, and composers to have an afternoon drink in Small's Paradise, a favorite Harlem bar, sitting next to politicians and postal clerks. Harlem was exciting and tough. Many Blacks were finding jobs because of World War II, and the nightlife was picking up. Malcolm saw the excitement of the nightlife, and he saw the poverty that was much of Harlem. Malcolm got a job at Smalls and began to learn from some of the men who ran the rackets in Harlem just what was going on in Harlem's underworld. He saw that the men engaged in such businesses as the numbers game, an illegal lottery based on horse racing, were as well respected as people who held steady jobs. He saw that the men engaged in such businesses as the numbers game, an illegal lottery based on horse racing, were as well as respected as people who held steady jobs. The men who controlled the various hustles were always looking for bright young men, and Malcolm was obviously bright. They offered him the opportunity to make money working for them, and he accepted their offer. When Malcolm had moved to Boston to live with Ella, he had entered a new phase of his life. For the first time, he had choices to make about how he would live. The choices he made were the ones he saw available for a young Black man. Malcolm could have continued his education in Boston if he had had both a strong desire to go to high school and a belief that more school would have benefited him. But he had already been discouraged from continuing his education. What was more, he had seen Black men with college educations working on the same jobs that he had worked. What Malcolm wanted to do, more than anything else, was to bring value to his life. He wanted to be looked upon as a person who had the respect of his fellow human beings, like his dad. By the time he reached Harlem, he was convinced that the respect he wanted would only be found within the Black community. Well, that made me think like his father, because his father was a very powerful man and he loved him. Now, this right here is when he was working on the railroad, selling sandwiches. Remember in the movie and stuff, he seen himself smashing the man in the face with that pie. And this right here is Small's Paradise, a hangout for artists, politicians, poets, and hustlers in Harlem. See? Yes. Oh, shit. I'm going to fix this. Oh, honey, we're on chapter 4, baby. We made it to chapter 4. And I think I'll stop right there and stuff. Yeah, we'll pick up right here tomorrow. Because I'll be read this whole book tonight. But at least I can do 4 chapters a night. And hopefully that won't be too much because I don't like to take up y'all's time and stuff, and I sure appreciate you. I really do appreciate you being here, your patience and your presence. And yeah, that was awesome. This is wonderful. Oh, and chapter 4 is Detroit Red. Yes, honey. I know it, right? Yep. So I love y'all, and we learning. We just learning. We got a whole lot of things to learn, a whole lot of saviors. Malcolm is one of our saviors to me. I know with religion and stuff, Jesus Christ is your only savior, and Jesus is jealous, and God is a jealous God and stuff, but I got my own saviors. I have my own saviors, y'all. I have my own thoughts, my own opinions and stuff. I do read these books. And a lot of what, the authors are saying, and look at a lot of videos and what they all are saying and stuff. And no one has really, ain't said what I said, but maybe they feel like they didn't have to tell us them things and stuff like that. And we supposed to read between the lines. So that's what you got to do, Black America. Everything that we learning, everything that's going on in the world and stuff, history today and tomorrow. You see, you got a vision of what tomorrow, the future finna look like. Hell, you seen the futuristic world rolling out in front of you. It ain't hard to see. You know about the jabbers and all of that, the matrix and the madness, the murder, the mayhem and shit. And we got to look at everything and read between the lines. What the hell is going on here? What does this mean for us? And not only that, as far as history going and stuff, I ain't seen no justification for 100 years of slavery, lynching. I ain't seen no justification for what happened to my brothers, the black men, our ancestors. So for me, I'm not going to heaven with white folks. You may be going to heaven with white folks. See, I'm not here to just read no books. You got to start thinking for yourself. And I'm not saying don't go to heaven. I'm just letting you know I ain't going to heaven. In my opinion, I don't think you should. But that's your decision because you're going by yourself anyway. Everybody going to make that trip by yourself. But you need to consider, Black America, where's the justice? Where's the justice when your black ass get to heaven? And everybody up there, Willie Brown up there, all of his murderers, all of them is up there. Mary Turner up there. Her unborn baby is up there. All the white men that lynched them and cut that baby out of her stomach is up there. All of them up there. Emmett Till up there. George Stinney up there. Carolyn Bryant, who lied on Emmett Till. Her ass up there in heaven. Her husband, her brothers, they all up there in heaven. So where's the justice for you, Black America? Just start thinking about it. You got to come to your own decisions. I came to mine. I know where I'm going when I leave here, honey. I'm going that way. I'm going that way. I'm going to the 12th of never, just like Earth, Wind, and Fire said. I'm done with white folks' afterlife on Earth. Yeah, I'm going where they can't go. They can go to heaven, and you going to go to heaven with them. And as sure as it says it right here on page 64 in Red Summer, William Joseph Simmons, he was a racist. He revived the Ku Klux Klan in 1915. Yep, he revived the Ku Klux Klan. I believe his real name was George F. Babbitt. I don't know. It just says Simmons was a racist George F. Babbitt, a club joiner haunted by delusions of greatness and obsessed with the belief that black people and immigrant people imperiled the United States, a nation divinely ordained to be ruled by white Anglo-Saxons. Well, he was a big old man. Well, see, Atlantans, because he was in Atlanta, well, Atlantans seen him as a big pious, puffery, prissy, big walking type of guy. Like he walk on his tiptoes and he real big and stuff, and like he made real soft. He walking, but he making soft. I don't know how the hell they seem like a cartoon character, I guess. But anyway, he had several positions. He was tried to be a doctor because he claimed he had some medical knowledge and stuff, like James Marion Sims didn't have none. Then he tried to be a preacher, but that wasn't good enough for him and stuff. He tried to sell insurance. That didn't work out and stuff. I read in another reading somewhere that he was a colonel in the war. So he did have on some his charms and stuff. Most of them were about fake. Yeah, the black men had all the real medals, most of them from them wars and stuff. But I digress. So he did have on his charms and his medals and stuff like that, being that he was a colonel. So okay. But he said that he revived the Ku Klux Klan because he had a spiritual vision of the Ku Klux Klan galloping across the sky in heaven. Yep. It says right here on page 64. I had no idea till I read this. I didn't know none of this. But he said he formed a group in response to a spiritual vision of robed horsemen galloping in the sky, followed by a vision of a map of the United States. So I ask you, Black America, you want to go to heaven with white folks and haven't thought about nothing, and you ain't remembered nothing, you ain't focused on nothing, you forgot everything, you sacrificed everything. So I'm just asking you, you better start thinking about it. You're best to start thinking about your life and your afterlife, honey. Because white America ain't got no empathy, no mercy whatsoever. White folks today is going by what they ancestors have designed. Yeah, that's why when we finish reading White Fragility and the white lady that's talking to other white women and white men and stuff, and she said that they supposed to interrupt white supremacy and racism. That's what white folks supposed to do. That's what y'all supposed to be doing, interrupting racism and white supremacy on earth. You ain't doing it on earth, then they ain't doing it in heaven either. You gonna get to heaven, Black American. That very well could be cotton in heaven. You ever think about that? It is white folks' vision. Your ass didn't come up with heaven. Stop lying. You did not invent the thought, the place of heaven. White folks put that together. Everything up there white. You don't even see no clouds in the sky when you see pictures. I've seen pictures of heaven. I remember when I was a little girl. Oh, so many pictures of heaven and stuff, and I'm just wondering, well, where's the trees and some rainbows? Can you see a sun or something? Why heaven ain't got a back door? I mean, yeah. So it just seemed to me like it was pretty bland. It's huge. It's humongous, though. Yeah, and that's all we knew though was heaven and hell. Between the two, where you gonna go? You gonna go to heaven. You want to go to heaven, and we spend our whole life, everybody's life. That's what we know. That's what white America know about us. That yeah, we got them in this life and the afterlife, the next life too, because they want your soul, your body here. And when you get in the afterlife, you ain't got this fleshy body no more, but they want your soul and your spirit there with them. And if you don't know you can go somewhere else, then you won't go nowhere else. But to me, it's got to be somewhere else. It cannot only be heaven and hell. If it is just heaven and hell, then somebody tell me white folks ain't even in heaven. Face. White folks ain't even in here. But see, I wouldn't believe that right there because, see, we've always been taught that God forgive everything. Why you going to lie and tell me white folks ain't in heaven? And I done learned my whole life that God forgive everything except for suicide. I used to wonder why he forgiving everything but suicide. If somebody don't want to be here no more, I ain't suicidal. I got work to do. I got babies to love, black people to heal, myself to heal. I'm gonna have another black baby. I'm just saying. But yeah, but why is it that? So God forgive all of this. Forgive all of this. So where the justice for you? There is no justice in it. I don't think it is. I do not think it is. And I'm just now reading these books right here. But everything that everybody's teaching us is telling us is being revealed. Hell, it don't take a motherfucking rocket scientist to put 2 and 2 together. Hell, if it come out 5 to you, just take one away. Just take one away. Ask some questions. Now, Will's up there in heaven. Who running things? God? Well, who he running it for? Everybody? Well, who get the most? People that look like him? White folks done gave us a vision of themselves. They the ones up there in control running things. When you cross over, what is seemingly clouds over here could be cotton on that side. As above, so below. It is some truths in the Bible. I believe that is some truths in the Bible. So that's why, I do have some propensity. I know that's a new word. Just came to me. I don't even know what it means. Just seemed like it sounds right. I do have some goals of at least looking at the Bibles and the contradictions, even if that. I'll take some of y'all scriptures and we'll look through them and stuff, however y'all want to do it and stuff. But the thing is, Black America, you memorize the Bible. Your ass sat there and memorized the whole entire Bible and still ain't put 2 and 2 together yet to don't spend your ever after with white folks. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to spend your forever after? You didn't know. That's the only reason why, because you did not know. But now that you do know, why you going to do it? It's going to take you some time for it to resonate in your mind and stuff, but you got to think outside of the box now, Black America. This is your chance to free yourself in this life and in the afterlife. Honey, the afterlife is going to be, forever and ever and ever. Do you know how long Willie Brown them, Isaac McGee, that were lynched here in Minnesota, 10 months after Red Summer? Minnesota had their own lynches too, honey. You know how long they've been in heaven waiting? Not to say I'm sure somebody else freed them too. But then I came along and freed them myself. So yeah, it ain't like I'm the only one that's did it and stuff, because I ain't. Everybody else done did it too. I just did it myself for those that I am with and stuff, on my behalf too. So I told them, you can get up out of heaven now. You ain't got to stay in heaven no more. You don't have to stay in heaven no more. I mean, from 1919, just them, from 1919. I'm not even talking about from 100 years. All of them. I told them, yeah, once I read it and it resonated in my mind that I'm not going, I told all my ancestors, I love you, and you can get on up out of heaven if you want to. You can fly away. Honey, you should have seen our ancestors flying, honey. Their wings came out. Yep. The other spirits didn't know. Their wings didn't come out. They couldn't fly off because they mentally wanted to stay in heaven, wanted to be in heaven. Our ancestors had no choice. They were ripped out of this life. They were burned at the stake, dismembered, castrated, eaten, made into soup, yanked out of this life. So they had no other knowledge than heaven and hell. And I wonder, is that why some of our brothers didn't say a word when they were being burned at the stake? Some of them cried. Isaac McGee cried, prayed to God to save them and stuff. A couple of them did. John Peterson was cussing white folks out. He was cussing them out. Then he was praying to God. He was back and forth. He was letting them have it though. But it's very hard, very difficult for me. I'm just saying, you need to think about it, where you're going to spend your forever out and how you're going to spend it. White folks this way here on earth, what do you think they're going to be like in heaven? It ain't going to be no different in heaven for you. Everything that you've been waiting on because you've been storing up your treasures is in heaven and stuff. You ain't going to get it. You ain't going to get it. White folks going to get all of that. God going to make sure that white folks get everything that's yours, just like they done got everything that's everybody else's here. That's how it's gonna be. It's an illusion that white folks have programmed us, indoctrinated us to believe, and I believed it because my mom and them believed in the stuff. I ain't never read the Bible. I was just glad when she said, "Face, you know what? You ain't even get out the car. Get out the car. You ain't even got to go to church this Sunday no more, cause I don't want you there." That's what my mama was saying and stuff, and I act like I was saying and stuff. And got out, honey. I about went in the house. I could have cooked everybody a big old breakfast every Sunday, but I ain't never liked to cook, so I didn't. But yeah, so I didn't really get to that pinnacle that I was telling y'all about, that religious pinnacle. I didn't make it to that one either. And I'm so thankful. I am so thankful and grateful that it's not a crutch on me. Jesus is not a crutch on me. You want to pray, meditate. I like to say meditate. You want to meditate for me, complain about me, anything to Jesus, God, please do it to my ancestors, and you'll get an answer real quick about my ancestors. Just take it to them. Take it to cosmic energy, Mother Gaia. Tell them all. Whatever you want to tell them and stuff. Just, you ain't got to go to Jesus. You ain't got to go to white Jesus and stuff. You go to Jesus, specifically called Black Jesus. You got 100 years of them right here. It ain't too hard to do. But I digress. I was just saying that this man talking about in heaven, who lied about heaven then? Who the fuck is lying? What kind of games are these? Then when we were reading the Emancipation of Robert Sadler, he was saying, I got to go back through that book too. See, I got to do my homework too, even though I'm learning and stuff, but I still got to go back through here and find these pages and stuff. But he was saying in this book right here, let me read this real fast. I'm not the only one who went through it, but I can't hold still no longer. I'm going to have to tell it. I thought I had forgotten, but I haven't. Lord, help me remember so I can tell it. Oh, Lord, help me remember. He wrote his story because he wanted us to remember when he was 5 years old what it's like to be sold by his father, him and his sisters, as a slave. The powerful true story of a man who was a 20th century plantation slave. Very powerful book. And he actually went back to his master because he didn't feel like he belonged anywhere. But in the book, he was a little boy because his dad sold him when he was 5, and I think he was probably like 8, 6, 7, 8, but he was playing with the white children and stuff that, he had to take care of the little girl and stuff like that. And he had asked the mother about church. And she told that little boy that if it was a heaven, and that if black folks was in heaven, they in heaven serving white people. That's what your ass is in heaven for. So I beg to differ, Black America. Why you ain't read between the lines? Why you ain't read? We know the Bible about you. I know it said kinky hair and bronze skin. I know it said that. I know it said that first the first gonna be last and the last gonna be first. I know it said those things because y'all make sure we know them things right there. But you ain't told us nothing about the afterlife or something different about the afterlife. Why everybody got to go to heaven with white folks? I ain't going there now. I know I got new information, new knowledge now. It took me some time. When I went through when I first with Trayvon Martin, it's been a long time since then and stuff to come all the way up there. Because I tend to go the long way around with stuff. But now that I'm here and stuff, I'm not going to heaven with white folks. And I just want y'all, my people, black people, to think about it, reconsider it. Because I don't want you to be trapped in heaven. We don't know when somebody going to come along and say, you can get out of heaven. You can leave now. But see, the thing about it is, it's different. We got new information now. And you can't give up this opportunity because it may take several lifetimes to come back around. They didn't have knowledge of no afterlife. All they knew was heaven and hell. So they went to heaven. However, being the parent of all people, cosmic energy protected them when they got to heaven. What it did was they still went through white folks madness in heaven. John Brown up there now cussing white folks out, telling them, let them go. You got them in heaven, still trapping them. But I digress. What happened was when they were lynched and burned at the stake and they went to heaven, their wings retracted. Their wings instinctively went in, so they didn't get their wings clipped. Your black ass, however, all this knowledge out here now, and your ass don't want to pay no attention to it stuff. When you get to heaven, white folk gonna clip your wings. Yeah, white folk gonna clip your wings. So when somebody else do come along and say, hey, you can leave out of heaven, like our brother Telvo claiming he was so disrespectful to black women, referred to us as dogs, and then we had to be a white dog if he wanted to sleep with us and stuff, and then his preference, the white woman ended up killing him and stuff, and rest wherever he at, but he's still in heaven. He can't get out. He in heaven with white people where he want to be. See, you got a choice while you here. Because when you get over there and stuff, you're either going to be there forever or you're going to be there where you can't get out. There's no way. So he won't be leaving heaven. He's going to be in heaven with white folks. Some of y'all is. But I'm just saying the ancestors, when I told them on my part, for me, that they can leave heaven, their wings magically grew. Their wings grew back out. Their wings, like a cat, or can produce its claws on demand. That's how their wings did. Their wings grew back out and they flew up out of heaven. You should have seen them. Everybody. Honey, they were getting out there, and then you see skin folk like Telvio hopping around with them little nubs and stuff, But yeah, he couldn't go nowhere, though. He's there. Now, Black America, I know you feel a lot of love and sympathy and mercy for white America stuff, but there's plenty of people on this planet that white America is not, they're not a threat to. They haven't been a threat to other people like they've been a threat to you. So white America will be happy in heaven. They can't go outside of heaven anyway. Somebody did. Yep, somebody did get out of heaven. A white person did. They got out of heaven and they into the ethers. They are out into the ethers. That's why there's a spiritual war going on in the ethers. Because they didn't know that somebody had escaped out of heaven and was out there roaming around in the ethers. I'm going to the 12th of never. Yes, honey, I'm going to the 12th of never. But they was out there behind them planets and stuff and meteorites hiding and sleeping, or procreating, or whatever it's called, however it's resonating in the afterlife. But when they were found out that they was out there and stuff, they had been out there for a long time, eons probably, because it ain't no time is an illusion and stuff. So they was out there for that long and stuff. But when our ancestors with cosmic energy realized that they had been infiltrated by white people that's supposed to be in heaven, that's why it's a spiritual war up there. It's a spiritual war. It's a war here. White folks on this planet got us in 2 wars. We've been in a war with white America for ever. It seemed like this the longest damn grudge I ever knew about. And and then there's the war in the rest of the world. So we already in them 2 wars right there, but it's a war going on in the spiritual world. So you're going to have to elevate Black American change. Everything about yourself. Honey, I'm finna go. Don't worry. You're going to have to elevate everything about yourself. What you eat, what you drink, what you thinking, what you watching, what you listening to, what you reading. Everything has to change about you. You got to elevate to a higher frequency now, because cosmic energy and Mother Gaia have activated. They have activated on your behalf. It's the carbonic energy. See, you made out of carbon, Black America. I didn't know that either. Yeah, you made out of carbon, selenium, and copper. White folks motherfucking ass made out of sulfur, ammonia, And what's the other one? I'm about to say vinegar, but it ain't vinegar, but they made out of some hard shit, nitrogen. Yeah. So carbonic energy, the carbon in you is really what's activating everything. Now, see, your DNA, the copper, the selenium, and the carbon is really soft and pliable and stuff. But the sulfur, nitrogen, and ammonia that white folks are made out of, see, you can't chew up this. It's like this right here. Y'all too different. You different from them. We're different. It's like your body, your system, your digestive tract can't process that, can't eat that. It'll be no toe up everything off in there. But somebody made out of sulfur, nitrogen, and ammonia, oh, that ain't no problem. They'll fuck that little piece of metal up right there and spit out the plastic. I'm just saying, we're different. We are very different. I didn't get this knowledge like this. But now that I have gotten this stuff, yeah, I gotta tell you, I gotta let y'all know. You know, it's a lot. They didn't teach us nothing. They didn't make sure we got anything else. Oh shit! And look at here, global patterns of language disequilibrium at the CD4, locus and modern human origins. That's from the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Oh, what was this about? I don't really remember what this was about, but I wrote down everybody's motherfucking name. However, I do want to read this part right here since we was talking, because, you know, black people, we got plant DNA. We supposed to be eating fruits. We got plant DNA. White people got animal DNA. It's true. I wrote it down word for word. We're different. So we got to act accordingly now. I forgot who that was said, know thyself and dress accordingly. I forgot who it was, but it's the same thing. Now we got to elevate accordingly, because when Mother Gaia and cosmic energy reach that threshold and they are, you know, at that threshold, we got to be on point with them. You can't be off. That's why we got to be serious and sincere about detoxing, learning, doing new things. Go out in nature. Start your garden up. That's a garden to feed you, but it's also healing also. So see, we got to elevate in ways and thoughts and practices that we never thought we would have to. I'm just saying, you know, I know I said I was done and stuff, and I am. I'm done. I love you people. I love my people, black people. I love you to life and the afterlife. It ain't nobody else on this side of the afterlife that I want to stand up for and look out for, that I want to let you know that, honey, all of this is about you. Every last bit of this is about your ancestors. Everything, even across the waters and stuff. Yep, even across the waters and stuff, because even though they over there, they still had a duty to all of mankind on the planet. Yeah, America ain't the only one finna get some goddamn judgment. Everybody finna get some motherfucking judgment about this. About this. Honey, do you know the theft of melanin? Do you know this is irreparable? It can't be repaired. No, the opportunity to repair this is gone now. It's gone. It's done with. So Black America, you got to get yourself in position. You got to get yourself in position with Mother Gaia, cosmic energy, become light as a feather. I'm just saying, you know, yeah, but I love y'all. Let me get on out of here, because you know I would talk, honey. I am long-winded about black people. I love black people. I'm so thankful I'm black. Have black babies. You here for two reasons. Have black babies and heal black people. But yeah, I love y'all. Good night. And yeah, peace and power to the people. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see here. The raw truth about everything. Hey there, who is people? Layla. Oh, Rainwater, it's so good to see you. Romella Lewis, good day and gratitude. Do you have American Indian lineage, ma'am? My great grandmama, she was a Cherokee or something like that. But I'm gonna get Mike TV to do my genealogical, trying to say my study for me and stuff, because I want both my chicks if I got two coming. My heart, I'm here in America. My heart do resonate with Africa too, because Black Africa and Black America is really one. We got to come together and fix this pettiness, you know, on both fronts. We all got to come together to match up with Mother Gaia and cosmic energy. Fuck the dumb shit of what everybody else is saying and stuff, all the other people in the world and stuff. We got to squash that. Africa got to squash all that shit and put all that pettiness aside. We do too. We got to squash them things that's done happened between us, because cosmic energy and Mother Gaia is bigger than anything we've endured on this planet so far. Mother Gaia want to go back all black. Want to go back all black. She's sick and tired of everybody else on her planet. White folks did it. White folks motherfucking asses did it, and everybody else helped them do it. Done polluted, mutilated, destroyed this planet, the stratosphere, her waters, done extincted over 60 planets, species. So yeah, Mother Gaia want to go back all motherfucking black. And cosmic energy is in agreement. So Black America and Black Africa, you either get on code. You either get on code or your ass will be no more. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. And if you won't be no more, then the planet gonna eventually just wither away. Just gonna wither away. It will be no, it'll linger for a while there. But you don't come together and stuff, it's just gonna go ahead and wither. Man, may do away with everybody all together and stuff. We don't know what this gonna be like. I ain't never thought like this. I didn't know who Dr. Frances Cress was talking to when she said you got a big brain. I didn't know she was talking to me, but okay, I got a big brain and I can think for myself now. I'm just saying, Mike TV. Hey, my brother. Yep, y'all go get your research done with Mike TV. You ain't got to go to Ancestry 123B, none of that. Go get your stuff done from Mike TV so you can know. You got some factual statistics, your proof right there. Mike got his proof on his channel. Just go get it. I can't wait to give me some free cash flow money. Cash flow like they be talking about and stuff with the stocks and stuff. Go invest in fan base if you got the money. It's $3.99. You and two other people, $100 a piece. Go invest in fan base. I think you get like 60 shares for it and stuff. If you ain't got that and stuff and y'all can't do it, go to Cash App and you can buy little stuff, little stocks for $1 on Cash App and stuff. And sometimes when you get your savings, your roundups, that's what it's called, your roundups, have it sent to savings. That's a little cash that can be adding up for you and stuff like that. I'm just saying, because everything is too expensive for all of us to get in on it. Those of us that missed that financial pinnacle, like myself. So, we got to find other ways and stuff. But yeah, I'm just saying, Layla, go harder. I can't come in from my TV, but I'm here. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. Beat Packs. Good day. It's so good to see you. I don't know why I started laughing, because you were laughing. I don't even know what you was thinking about, but thank you anyway. And Elijah, how you doing? It's so good to see you, Elijah Farrakhan. I still be thinking about our violent man, the violet, the violin, Elijah. And the police killed him and stuff. Every time I see the name Elijah, I be thinking about him and stuff. I'm going to get a picture of him and put on my wall, too. He played the most beautiful violin. Yeah, and Farrakhan, I love Farrakhan, too. The raw truth about everything, most FBA or Black Americans are of mixed DNA, African, European, and Native American, with some Southeast Asian from Madagascar and some South Asian from India. So we'll blend. Yeah, well, I'll take all my checks. Yeah, look like they owe me at least 2 checks. I want both of them. Yeah, that is a lot. You got you a channel too? Ooh-wee. Yes, honey, because I will come over there on your channel too. You can be mixed unless you look like certain color. That's a lie. For example, Brazil have a mix and they come in all shades. Yeah, sure do, honey. I don't know. I hope Black folks know who I'm talking to. And, because there's a whole lot of white folks out here, too. I'm just saying, black folks is who I'm talking to heal. I can't heal nobody else. I ain't even trying to heal nobody else. Sure ain't, honey. But I digress, and I love y'all, family. And I see you on the next page. I'm getting used to it.